wish I wouldn't count down. It's kind of stupid. Just start. You sure you want to start? Yes. Okay. So, how does genetics work? Let's start at the basics. DNA, so the good work. Got 3 letters. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 letters so far. Yes. So everybody has a bunch of these little strands of DNA. Okay? So the DNA is all wrapped around itself, and it's coded so that there's an opposite base pair attached. So technically, you have the code twice. So what's inside of a little spermie? A very lame-looking little sperm. Sorry, I will fix. That's the one that didn't make it so well. There you go. Okay. Now we got a good family here. So what we got is, so there's my little spermie here. What we have is we have a bunch of DNA. How many chromosomes are in something like this? 23. Haploid, right? So half the DNA. So when in this code right here is coded by, it's half of the DNA that's provided by the sperm donor. I'm not going to say the dad because that's complicated, but the sperm donor. Okay, so how do little spermies work? They don't swim to the end. They swim. Okay, so this is a great, if you ever take human sexuality, I highly recommend it. That's a giant sperm. We're going to have to make that smaller because I realize I'm zoomed way out. Nice. Make him this big. Okay. We can zoom in, make him just as big as he was before. Oh boy, his tail's not really attached. Sorry, little guy. There you go. Okay, so what we have on either side of this little spermy tail, we have an actin myosin binding site. And what it does is when the actin myosin binds, it moves the tail up. When it unbinds, the tail goes the other way. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Okay, good. So, as it goes, this long filament that hangs out after this causes a snake-like swimming motion. So the shape of this little guy is really important because, yes, it's a little guy because what's his chromosome? He's a Y chromosome. Okay? Okay, so, well, actually, he also has X's in them too, but he's an X or a Y. Okay, so moving on. So as it's swimming along, if there is current, let's draw some current flowing down this way. Which way is it going to turn? So if it's being pushed this way, as current pushes on it, what's going to happen? This part of the tail is going to swing around, and it's going to go upstream. So when you say swim toward the egg, not really. It swims. It just swims blindly. It just starts going. Whenever the current is going, it flows, it goes against the current. It swims upstream. Okay? So, and this is pretty much to scale here. Actually, it's even more silly than that. So, guess what the egg does? The egg happens to cause inside the fallopian tube, it causes the cilia to push it down the pipe. Little cilia inside the fallopian tube brush it down the pipe. Starts out in the ovary, starts flowing this thing down towards the pipe. So as it's flowing down, the current is flowing down the fallopian tube. So when an egg is present, what does the sperm do? It tries to. It swims up the fallopian tube. And so there's enzymes on the surface of the sperm, and they happen to be attracted to the surface of the egg. And so what happens is, as they go, all of a sudden, one little sperm will go and start hitting the egg. And as soon as it hits the egg, it swims really fast. A bunch of sperm can attach to the same egg. But as soon as that enzyme pushes through the membrane turns hard. As soon as it chemically changes the shape of the membrane, so all of a sudden what happens to the rest of the sperm? They can't get in. So now there are cases where two sperm get in at the same time. Twins, identical twins. Because then the egg splits in half, and it's how this works. I take a genetics class. I don't know, but this half turns into one baby. This half turns into the other baby. Yeah, that's an identical twin. Sometimes you get two eggs, and that's fraternal twins. Okay, and there's even cases where like the octomom. Well, but she took a drug that caused a bunch of eggs to be released. Well, does the sperm care? No. What does it do? Swims uphill. Doesn't want to get in. It just swims uphill. It swims upstream. That's all we get. So we got. So it's pretty amazing. I studied developmental biology for a long time in graduate school, and it's just amazing that any of us make it at all. It's just crazy how this actually works. And so I'm going to hit pause on this really quickly. We start out as a fertilized egg. Right? So the fertilized egg breaks into layers. This is very disturbing in a minute here. Okay. So these layers form the baby. So what we start out with is the back of the cell starts forming neural tissue. The front part of the cell starts forming placental tissue. What's the placenta? It does come out with the baby because it's actually a part of the baby. What is it though? So maybe pull the picture. I will. Yeah, it nourishes, definitely. Okay, my brain's like, feeds the baby is what I would have said, but yes. But so what it does is, okay, without being disgusting, when a female is at the end of her menstrual cycle, the stuff that comes out, the effluent that comes out, are these little tiny curly blood vessels. Okay, and so these little tiny curly blood vessels, some of them are pretty big. Picture a big flap of skin with 1,000 of those stuck on one side of it. That's what a placenta is. So what it does is this big flap of looks like skin, it's kind of like a thick spongy skin, grows against the side of the uterus. And as it grows against the side of the uterus, it's about a little bit bigger than my hand. It's a pretty good sized chunk. And all the back side of it is full of these little tiny blood vessels, little curly blood vessels, so they can move around a little bit. When my daughter was born, I got to look at the placenta after it was born. It was cool! That's neat! Oh, there's a baby over there. Well, that's cool. Okay, let's look at the baby. And they disposed of it. I didn't get the chance to look at it any better. But it's kind of not easy to find. It's one placenta. But, okay, so getting back. So this forms the placenta, and the back half of the egg forms the rest of the embryo. Okay? So the back part of this, the really furthest part back, forms, that's where the brain is coming, called the blastocyst. Okay, so the blastocyst is what forms the baby. Now, a researcher at somewhere in the United States, Johns Hopkins or something like that, you Google it, you can figure it out, he just cloned a bunch of bees. He started growing baby tissue in clumps in dishes. Now, they're not viable fetuses because they don't actually have spermines attached to them. So they're just little clumps of fetal tissue to study how the baby brains develop. Baby brains develop, growing human. Oh no. And they grow really quickly. How fast does a fetus grow? Ridiculously fast. Ridiculously fast. And so as a result, there's something going on in fetal development that makes these little things so amazing. So that's why the researchers wanted to have these little globs of blue tissue in the petri dish, because we can study how it works. Yay! how soon do we have a cloned army? Well, the nerds that are doing the science now grew up watching the science fiction because they grew up watching it and think that's possible, so they make it possible. Yeah, well, the phone watch has been around since the 1920s, but no one could make it work. In the 1980s, they had one that actually worked, but it was so clunky and horrible and didn't work well, they didn't do it. But now people have, I think, 3 of them in here. And it's normal. Okay? So, thank you. Okay. Well, wouldn't it be weird if we could just talk to our computers? Hey, Google, what's the square root of 7? You've been really disappointed lately. Hey, why don't you talk to me? Oh. Okay, well that's why. Thank you for telling me. As opposed to just thinking of ignoring me. Okay. It was stats the other day, we just kept talking. I'm like in the other side of the room, I'm talking. Were you there for that? Yeah. All of a sudden my phone goes, I'm sorry, I don't understand. I didn't even say the hey Google. Okay? It's listening all the time. Anyway, so.
Your phone has no signal, so I can't help you with that at the moment.
Thank you. It's a hole over here. Okay, email. So, the blastocyst, this is where we get stem cells from, by the way. If I clone this blastocyst, what can I get? Stem cells. So what is a stem cell? It's a cell with all the DNA in it. Your skin cells have all of your body's DNA in them? Turns out no. Once they specialize, what happens to a lot of the DNA? Technically, they are in there, but are my skin cells able to produce bone? No, because certain genes are turned on, certain genes are turned off to make them into skin cells. And by turning some, like I always laugh when you get older, some of the hair follicle cells forget that they're not normal skin cells. Like I have hair that grows at the top of my ear. Why would a hair need to grow on the top of my ear, like that part right there? Because the poor little cell there goes, I'm a hair cell now, and all of a sudden it starts growing your hair. And like, the joke is you lose hair off your forehead as you get older and it lands in your lower back. Yeah, good time. So, as the hair lady that cuts my hair, I don't know, my hairdresser? No, her name's, I wouldn't say Silence. But her name's Helen. She calls it monkey hair. That as men get older, they get more monkey hair. In places. What are you doing? Ow! What was that? Okay. So get it back. So these little baby brains are full of stem cells. The location of where they are on the blastocyst tells them what they should become. The blastocyst elongates and spreads out and forms a neural plate. This is a bundle of stem cells, mostly neural stem cells. The baby starts with a brain. How does the baby start with a brain? Doesn't need the most development, but how does the body know how to grow? With the brain as a template. So if you insult the fetus at this point, so this right here is the plate of neural tissue. So what's going to form is the brain is going to form at the top, and what's going to be at the bottom? Spinal cord. There's something called spina bifida. Spina bifida is where the spine doesn't close all the way. And if the spine doesn't close all the way, the sensory neurons on the back never form. Okay, and so if the sensory on the nerves on the back never form, then what happens to the area below that spot? They can't feel at all. So my friend's daughter Claire was born with spina bifida. And they were on a ski vacation. She had no idea she was pregnant, and they were sitting in hot tubs and having a great time, and had no idea that she was pregnant. And they got home, and she found out she was pregnant, but by sitting in those hot tubs while they were on the ski vacation, what happens when you raise the baby's body temperature up? What happens to neural development? It goes down, and that probably caused the spina bifida. Yeah, and so it's one of the students in my developmental class was saying that her younger sister has cerebral palsy, and her mom had preeclampsia while pregnant. Preeclampsia is where your blood pressure goes up super high. So if your blood pressure goes up super high, what happens? Well, when the blood pressure goes up high in the mom, the amount of transfer of nutrients back and forth across the fetus goes down. Because it goes from areas of high pressure to low pressure, and if the blood pressure goes up, nutrients don't flow back and forth across. Cerebral palsy. It's where it means that there's a lot of different causes, but it basically means that the brain doesn't grow properly, and I had a student with cerebral palsy that her cerebellum was severely affected by her palsy, and it was scary. I mean, she couldn't coordinate movements very well. She's smart, but she's not coordinated. So, anyway, okay. So now, dropping the pen makes it activate. Okay. Okay, so now, as the neural, this is where the covering hat. So now we're forming the neural tube. As the neural tube forms, these are the little nodules on the spinal cord. That's the spinal cord. Those are the buds for the bones of the spinal cord. So they start right away. And so watch how the top forms here. Okay, so as it slowly wraps and folds around, inside the tissue on the inner wall of this tube, the outer wall of the tube becomes the baby. The inner wall of the tube becomes brain and spinal cord. Do you even know you're pregnant at this point? No. This is a couple of weeks, not even weeks, a couple of days after pregnancy, after, hippity-dippity. Sorry. Or whoops, well, depending. Yeah, so it's funny, we're going to do a talk for the, Marissa and I are going to do a talk about relationships and dating, and one of the things that we need to talk about with the group that we're talking about is, when can you get pregnant? What's the answer? Anytime you have sex. Because it turns out that sometimes sperm can live for 4 or 5 days. That's all right. I'm on my period. We'll be fine. No, because if they're slow, they like going uphill. More like an asteroid field as opposed to the open space, but still. Sorry, but it's funny. Okay, but I'm recording. Come on. Okay. Please don't see me later. Okay. But so the idea of this is that even though a lot of women don't even realize the sperm can live for 3 or 4 days or 5 days, that's some women usually ovulate on day 12, but if you have an odd cycle or a short cycle, can you ovulate sooner than that? Yeah. And it's very important that there's apps on your phone that you can get for calendars to know when you're ovulating, because when you're ovulating, the high probability of getting pregnant goes up dramatically, ridiculously, especially with the frequency of intercourse. Okay, moving on. So, it's important to know. It's really important to know, and a lot of college students don't realize this. If you miss a single birth control pill, what can that cause? Cause an ovulation. Yeah, so a lot of times, depending on the type of birth control pill that people are on, if they're using birth control, By the day, if you just miss one dose, that can cause a spontaneous ovulation. That helps it prevent that. So, it's not a good thing to do. You have usually once a cycle, but it's not horrible depending on what pill it is. Because if you're around day 12 or 13 when your body should be ovulating, usually when you first take them, you have to go for at least 2 months to make sure that you're safe. And when you stop taking them, you have to go for another 2 months because sometimes people get very ovulatory after they stop taking them. So be careful. And you don't want. Why would you not want to keep taking it if you accidentally got pregnant? It's not really going to. I don't think there's too many side birth effects caused by taking birth control pills, but it does alter the hormonal environment, which might not be good for developing fetus. Okay, so getting back. So the idea is, when we first start, what we have is what's called proliferation. We have proliferation. What the proliferation is, the cells are constantly replicating. And as they're proliferating, they are growing really fast. During early development, 120,000 neurons a second are splitting and dividing. 120,000 neurons a second are splitting and dividing. So it's crazy. So, and now we get to see, So notice that neural tube. Yeah. Notice that neural tube where it was closing over actually is the back. So the stomach part comes first, the ventral surface comes first, and it closes around the back. And now all of a sudden we have this spinal cord, we have this longitudinal tissue. This longitudinal tissue is starting to differentiate. What are these little areas up here starting to form? Arms. So the neurons in this area are triggering the cells to grow arms. If you get an involving machine and add a little bit of duplicate DNA down in here, what do you get? Oxoman. Okay. Doc Ock. I missed it. Okay, sorry. Okay. But then again, what's down at the bottom down here? The legs. And then you start to see the head going at the top. Yeah. Head, yeah. Yeah, that's Abby and... Yeah. So sometimes, two identical twins, the egg doesn't fully split. And that's what we call two-joined twins. Except the egg, as opposed to... Biological systems don't work perfectly. What happens to most fetuses that are not functional? It's spontaneous abortion. 2/3 of fetuses don't make it. 2/3 of conceptions just completely fall out, and you don't even ever know you're pregnant. But the third that make it, then there's a small chance of that third that make it could actually make it to full term. There's another big chunk of percentages that don't make it past this phase. So my wife had a miscarriage at week 8, where we went and we found out pregnant. We're planning people. We want to have the babies at spring break time so that we have spring break off. She takes the rest of the semester off. We have the entire summer, and then she goes back to school in the fall. And we spent a lot of baby time planning. So with my daughter, it was like we looked at the date we wanted the baby. We counted back 9 months, and we looked at plus or minus when we're ovulating, got the math down. Okay, today, now. Luckily, being male, it's always go time, so it's fine. But but literally, my daughter was born April 5th. It's like, you guys just follow science. I've studied this for years. I got this. Second baby got right on schedule, pregnant right away. And of course, my father-in-law started telling everybody, do not tell people you're pregnant for the first 6 to 11 weeks, because most babies don't make it that fast. And my wife did have a miscarriage at 10 weeks or 11 weeks. And so that was that was a major shocker. And what happened is right at this phase, this is when the heart tissue should start developing. And so how do we know the heart tissue develops? Heartbeat. So this would be called a peanut phase. This is 6 to 8 weeks, somewhere in there. And the little peanut phase, there's a little heart in here. And you can actually see it on a sonogram. And it's not really pumping anything, it's just moving. It doesn't have any chambers yet, but give it time. But the muscles are constantly contracting. Why do you need that feedback? Yeah, so in order for the neurons to work, they need feedback. So the neurons are sending signals, hey, heart, beat. The heart starts beating, and the heart beating causes the neurons to connect the neurons to the spinal cord. So the way it works is actually pretty simple. Okay, so it's pretty simple. It's supposed to be timed, that didn't work very well. There you go. I dropped this over the summer, and the button doesn't quite work well anymore. Okay, so I'm going to draw the heart, and the heart is going to release neurochemicals. Okay, and as the heart releases neurochemicals, it has neurons that start growing out. The spinal cord has neurons, and when this is releasing the chemicals, the spinal cord is also reaching out. How do they know which way to go? They follow what's called concentration gradient of the transmitter. All the neurons are growing all the time. They all are branching and growing. But if one finds, like if I'm branching, all of a sudden I find something that I can talk to, this one stays. What happens to all the other branches around it? It's called pruning. So there's a chemical called neural growth factor that facilitates the connection, and another one called NDF, neural death factor, which prunes. One of the things that they're looking at with Down syndrome, Down syndrome might be caused by not enough neural growth factor. So Down syndrome is where the genetics pull apart. It's like the conjoined twins, but when the genetics splits apart, part of the 21st chromosome doesn't pull apart, it stays there. It's called the trisomy 21. There's another disorder called Klinefelter's syndrome, where Klinefelter's, the person has 318 chromosomes. And there's a host of genetic deficit problems associated with having this Klinefelter's and also Down syndrome. But what's interesting is that as the heart's beating, it connects with the neural tissue. And so that's what baby number 2 did. Baby number 2 didn't make it past this phase. It never connected. So we went, wife's feeling just same as she always does, but did the sonogram and no heart rate, no heartbeat. So they sent us down to the hospital, and like so why do we have to go to the hospital? The DNC. Basically, they have to clean the uterus out because what if you just leave the dead fetus tissue in there? Yeah, so sometimes women it's just like it's like a heavy period, and it's this big, so it's not like you're not giving birth, but it just becomes like a heavy period, and you don't even notice. But other times it can, if it gets stuck in there, it can get septic, and your body will try to reabsorb it, and then it's not good. Anyway, that actually happened to a friend, one of our really good friends. One of her tertiary friends that happened to, that the baby passed away. And she had to go and get an emergency because she was getting really sick and had no idea why she kept getting so sick. And they found out that the baby had passed away and her body was encapsulating it. It's really sad. But, okay. All right. So now, what do you notice about the brain? What part of the brain grows first? Brainstem. This is where the brainstem is so important. Notice we have a vestigial tail. This is the tail of our spinal cord. Okay, a little leg, the arm bud. The face is right here. That's the face. Okay, here's the brainstem. And this is the forebrain. This is everything above the midbrain. Okay, so from the thalamus, hypothalamus, all that going forward. So you see kids with Down syndrome, what do their faces look like? Smush. kind of almost like a pug, if you want to. Not, I don't want to be condescending, but their faces aren't pushed out; they're very flat. Okay, so if we pull up Down syndrome face, okay, that's actually a really good picture. You notice they all have a very similar look. So you notice that their upper lip is flat across. Their eyes seem to be small and further back. The forehead seems to be big and the face seems to be small. Because what happens is as the brain grows, what does it do? Pushes your face forward. Pushes your face all the way up. You're going to make it. Wrong pipe. Okay. Oh, darn it. Notice that the medulla is huge compared to the rest of it. Come on. Yeah. No, so I had a student, what was it, 67 years ago that has Down syndrome, but is perfectly cognitively fine. So the question is that what does it do? It changes the way the brain grows. Cognitively, the student was fine, but she had the Down syndrome thing. And she had trouble because their tongue is too big for their mouth a lot of times. And that's why you see them with their, because if their face doesn't grow, but their tongue does, it's a lot of space. So she didn't know what she was going to do. I mean, because can you imagine that she's very hip and very with it and completely conscious of what's going on around her, but when people look at her, how do they treat her? Like like you have someone with Down syndrome. Right, and so a lot of times she kind of makes the joke at people when someone's treating her that way. She goes, ugh, and looks at them. Well, it's because it's really kind of almost a passive-aggressive thing because she gets so upset about people treating her that the way that she looks that, I mean, eventually she could probably have plastic surgery and get a lot of that fixed, but that's sort of South Korea. They got the export plastic surgery there. But again, that's cost a ton of money to do that. So anyway, so getting back to this. So watch the face grow. Notice what is a puppy? It's a human puppy. Oops. Hold on. Wait. I want to get to that part next. Okay, fine. Darn it! Big fat fingers. Come on. I don't want to see that part yet. That's a really neat part. Okay, so as the baby's going, don't play. Good. As the baby's going, what happens? What's starting to grow? Wrinkles. So the more the baby is stimulated in the utero, the more wrinkles form. If the baby is not stimulated in utero, what could cause the baby not to be stimulated in utero? Alcohol. Yeah, so any kind of drug that lowers synaptic activity, like alcohol, can cause the baby's brain to be significantly less wrinkled. There's something what's called fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Okay, that's what I studied all the way through graduate school. So fetal alcohol spectrum disorder means that the baby's brains don't develop the connections between the neurons whenever the alcohol is present. So 60,000 neurons a second. This little double chin guy right here is probably getting close to the third trimester by looking at his brain. During the first trimester, most women feel really tired and sick because the baby's generating a bunch of new stuff. During the second trimester, second 3 months of pregnancy, how do you feel? Just a waddly version of your normal self. Yeah, it's just that. Yeah. Okay, but basically during that second trimester, the baby's kind of finished all the major parts it needs to grow. So what does it do between the second and the beginning of third trimester? It just grows. And so it just grows, and it doesn't grow that fast until that third trimester. When that third trimester hits, my daughter's volleyball coach is in her third trimester right now. She's due like next 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. It's pretty funny. Because whenever she's coaching, she jumps up and goes, oh! And she's like, coaching and trying to, you jump off the bench to yell. Oh! But, and she found out she's having a boy. She already has 2 sons and a husband, and she's like, another effing boy. Can I please have a girl? Can I have something pink and fluffy in my house? No, it's more people having cats on the couch, laughing at it. It's like, I hate boys. Danger. Thinking of the soccer team if you have one more. Okay. So that's the joke. That when you want a girl, if you try, you're gonna have the soccer team. That's good. Okay. So going back, so this little tiny thing at third trimester, I'm gonna open my eyeballs and land right on it. We did that earlier in my other class. Okay. That's not today, but I told you before, I just open my eye real big and bring it. Okay. So, during the third trimester is when most of the cells are proliferating, and that's what the next little part about this is that how the cells start migrating. What causes the cells to migrate and proliferate to connect around the brain? Not the DNA, glial cells. Glial cells. Oh, we don't care about sulky anxiety. Come on. Come on. This is really fascinating. Come on. Oh, darn it. Start at the inside, work on the way out. So this is what's called a radial glia. It's called a radial glia because it has the star with the rim that's going on. So what they do is the radial glia is actually the one that creates the structure of the brain. So they send out these long branches, and when they get to where the synaptogenesis is occurring, where the cells are replicating, that neuron, that glial cell says, hey, why don't you come down here, hold my hand. And a neuron will migrate down that glial path. When it migrates down the glial path, what does it start to collect on? Inside around the nucleus of the glia. And as you collect here, this forms a nucleus of cells. We talked about different nuclei in the brain, like the occipital lobe, and we talked about other areas. Each one of those areas is organized by the glial cell. So the glial cells are the ones that actually create the structure of your brain. They're the ones that send out these signals to draw in the little baby neurons. These are baby neuron stem cells. Okay. So we start out at the center and build a layer first. Then as we go towards the surface, the layers become more and more complex. So this is where with Down syndrome, what we were talking about before, that if the Down syndrome is affecting the kid early in development, there's more cognitive deficit. If it's affecting the kid later in development, it's more subtle deficits. That's the same with fetal alcohol syndrome. We're noticing that when we studied it, it was called fetal alcohol syndrome. Now it's called then it was called fetal alcohol effects, and now it's called fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And so what fetal alcohol spectrum disorder means is that depending on the level of alcohol at a particular time, depending on where in this process it's disrupted. When we work with rats, we could actually predict what deficit the rats would have giving alcohol at particular times. Yeah. So caffeine dilates blood vessels and increases the risk of preeclampsia. But most, like in England, they say don't have more than 14 cups of tea a day. Well, a lot of English people pretty much have cups of tea every 5 or 10 minutes. Cup of tea time, and you stuff it down. You have another cup of tea, and it's just like, it's mostly water. There's very little caffeine when you have multiple cups of tea a day. But if you drank, like I made this full of fresh coffee this morning. This is what, 32 ounces of coffee? I have not been sleeping the last 2 nights, so I need a little fuel. But, okay. I can drink coffee like that on an empty stomach, but if I drink my green tea on an empty stomach, I get so nauseous. Oh. I have a really good matcha cold brew that we make. It's so good, but boy, if I drink that in the morning, pretty far. Okay, sorry. So, I don't put milk in either. So, easy or complex so far? So each column, we didn't talk about this very much, but each column of neurotissue does the same thing. So picture a column as here's my glial cell, and a column is one of these little cells going down. Every column does the same thing. As the cells get more mature, they migrate further and further out and form layers. So columns and layers. Your entire brain is organized through columns and layers of neural tissue. As the neural tissue goes up later toward the surface, it's later developing and more complex. As it gets near the base, it's simpler and less complex. Okay? Okay, just to point out, he just changed the glial cell into a neuron. He was talking about the neuron, using the neural tissue, which was fully migrate along the glial cell, and then what did he just start labeling? So if you're watching the video, right, and then you move on, but if you take the video, you'll be, no, these are the neurons. So, don't listen to this part if you want. But, the Yale probably is so as these little baby neurons are growing and migrating, they're forming nuclei. And DNA from the glial cell expresses different characteristics in the cells. Some cells start releasing GABA, some cells start releasing dopamine, some release serotonin. All of that is controlled by what's called epigenetics. Epigenetics is the environment expressing genes. The environment expressing genes. So, what are the two basic ideas of evolution that have been floating around? Well, we know that. That's really not that exciting anymore. But, so I'm going to write Lamarck up here. Anybody heard of Lamarckian evolution? How does it work? Okay, so Lamarck said it was acquired. And also acquired. So I'm going to, okay, hold on. Okay, shoot for it. Well, I just erased the characteristics. Son of a gun. So I'm going to draw a little picture instead. Okay, so here is a very lame giraffe. Okay, it's an alpaca. Okay, so now, I see alpaca, not giraffe. So if this alpaca really likes, which is like a llama without the pompadour, okay. But if this alpaca really likes leaves, it stretches its neck every day to eat leaves. So what happens with its children? According to Lamarckian evolution, the children will be born with longer necks. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So now, is that crap or is that worse? So one of the theories behind it is that Lamarck looked at animals and said, wow, animals with longer necks survive better, therefore as the parent stretches, the child learns to stretch. If the mom learns to play piano, then the baby is going to be better at playing the piano because the mom spent all the time learning. And it was called evolution of acquired characteristics. So if you learn how to do something, will your kids naturally be better at it? That's according to theory, yes. Most of you are saying, no, that was just proven back as soon as Darwin showed up. How does Darwin work? So how would we use this with a alpaca eating leaves? Yeah, so we have a bunch of short-necked alpacas down here, dead. Feet up there. Okay? Okay, so we have a bunch of short-necked ones here dead, and a bunch of long-necked ones here surviving. So the babies are all born with different length necks. The ones with the longer necks survive. They pass on their genes to the next group. Right? Well, it turns out that how long does it take to change a species? A long time, lots of generations. It's a lots of trial and error. And in most places, evolution runs relatively slowly. That's why we're killing frogs. Almost all of frogs. Except one kind of frog. American bullfrog. What's happening with the American bullfrog? It's adapted to higher ultraviolet levels. It doesn't get skin cancer. It's not affected by pesticides. And they make really pretty calls. If you ever hear a bullfrog, go to a golf course, you'll hear a bullfrog. Because they're everywhere. And why do they get rid of, the cane toad was another one. They brought him into Australia to get rid of some beetle that was eating all the crops, sugarcane crops. And guess what happened? They completely destroyed everything because they ate everything and killed all the local good bugs and bad bugs. And then they discovered that the cane toads were also extremely poisonous, so they started killing all the dogs and coyotes and everything else that kept the predators down. And the toads don't eat rabbits, and the coyotes are dead from eating the toads, so therefore what happens? Don't mess with Mother Nature, folks. Well, they're all over the place in Hawaii, too. But, anyway, sorry. So, how come these frogs and toads survive? They can't reproduce enough to change their DNA enough to change, so what do they have to change? They have the genes to survive. It's which ones are expressed or not. That's what's called epigenetics. In other words, you have a bunch of genes in your body that are not being used. And then when they get expressed, then the behaviors occur. So it's